Can I just say one thing? Software updates. Are you feeling me? Oh my gosh. Took me a minute. I'm not technically late, I don't think, but still. So, welcome everybody to the weekly Career Alchemy broadcast, the live broadcast streaming on all your channels, including LinkedIn and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook too, I believe. And my name is Lori Swanson. So if you've never met me before, my name is Lori Swanson, and I am the CEO of Inspire Tech, a career coaching organization. And I'm also the founder of Career Alchemy Academy, which is also, I would say, a career coaching. Um, I do career coaching there, but it's more than that. It's a community of women gathering to for coaching in their careers, whether it's job search or some sort of career repositioning that's happening, but also um, we have events, speakers. We go to networking things together in the Chicagoland area, but it is virtual, so it's people from all across the U.S. and Canada are members. And so I would love to have you um, message me. We can jump on a call. We can talk about what's right for you. Is it private coaching? Is the community the best spot for you right now? Is it a combination? And so uh, that all to say, you know, follow the QR code or DM me on LinkedIn, send me a message out on the other channels, and let's chat. And today in the broadcast, um, I wanted to chat about, I want to ask you a question, I guess, to start, which is, are you in a career crisis? And is it time to amputate something? So I'm going to talk about crisis as well and what I mean by that. But this whole conversation today started with me listening to a podcast. And this one was Mel Robbins, a recent podcast from Mel Robbins. And she was interviewing Dr. Rahul Jandayal. And he is a brilliant man. He is a brain surgeon, neuroscientist, author, and it has great story, like a life story, which I'll touch on just a little brief bit of it today, because that's what had me thinking about this topic about a career in crisis. Um, but hearing him talk about his life trajectory and how different things happened coincidentally and not so coincidentally, that helped him to be who he is today, helped him to make these decisions. But for our purposes, he, Dr. Jandile came to the United States, moved to LA at 9 years old from Kashmir, which was experiencing some turmoil. And he and his family immigrated here, and when he's talking about it, you can just feel his gratitude, immense gratitude um, for the safety, I think, that it provided for his family, the a place to um, eventually grow, I guess, a neurosurgeon, brilliant scientist here in the United States. So from these immigrant beginnings, and that's what's so um, I think important right now to remember. The that I'm not going to go political on us, but that we all came from somewhere, and we all are using our lives in ways that are touching other people's lives, especially when we're provided with some level of opportunity. And so he moved to LA, 9 years old, from Kashmir. And he, of course, 9 years old, entered school. And he admits, he said, I was never a great student. I did not like reading. I didn't like sort of that traditional classroom setting. Yet he tested well. And eventually he got into University of California, Berkeley. So he gets accepted to Berkeley, I don't know, 18, 19, whatever age, moves to San Francisco and out of LA to San Francisco. And he really wanted to leave. He was ready to be somewhere else. So he gets to San Francisco and, uh, you know, things began to unravel a little bit for him and his family. His mother was diagnosed with cancer. A neo-Nazi had moved in next door to his parents, and there was threats, and it just felt again, I can only imagine, but that consistent low level and at times probably high level anxiety, fear that's happening in those circumstances. And he wasn't doing well at school, and he was partying hard. He says, I was doing a lot more partying than probably I should have. And he recognized, this young man recognized in that moment that he was in a time of crisis and that something had to give, right? Something had to change. And so he made an unusual decision to what he calls amputate, now that he's a surgeon. I don't think he probably used that term at that time, but he, in hindsight, yes, he's amputating Berkeley, which is unusual and sort of counterintuitive when you think about the fact that probably everyone else would have, suggested some other things that he could do, some other things he could try to help reduce, the crisis he was, experiencing, feeling, to help reduce that, but not lose this prestigious, life-altering opportunity that graduating from Berkeley was offering him and his family. But he just, that was the decision he made. And he moved back to LA. He, of course, got to be with his mom, and he joined a community college where he talks about meeting his mentor there, and then those other synchronicities that happen when you make a decision that there are times where you are at a choice point, right? And you make a decision and it may not make logical sense out in the world, but it ends up being the best choice you've ever made, right? And sometimes you don't even know it at the time. It could be a simple decision, like, I had a girlfriend who encouraged me to go to the same college she went to. I had myself not had a great early experience. My freshman year in college was not ideal for me, and I was back at home just doing my thing, waitressing and going to the community college here. And I had a friend who was like, you should apply to this school. You should go to this school, which ended up, I did end up applying there. And I and moved out of Illinois across the country to the University of Texas at Austin. And at the time, it wasn't, it was sort of just like, oh, okay, I'll apply, kind of an off the cuff decision. But it ended up being one of the most important choices that I've ever made. And so sometimes those choices that you make are, seem very simple and ordinary. And then other times you're sort of back up against the wall and you realize that, you're experiencing what Dr. Jan Dial called crisis. And as I'm listening to him, I'm thinking to myself, I have been this year feeling a similar sense of being in crisis, though I would not have used that word until I heard this podcast. And then, of course, I do the deep dive and like, what is crisis? What is the definition of crisis? I mean, crisis seems so dramatic to me. I never would have called where I was me being in crisis. Like I wasn't physically experiencing war, right? My company had been solidly growing at a comfortable pace. I have, married to just the best guy. We have a really stable and loving relationship. My kids are doing well. I have a great, group of friends, and you know, it all looks really, you know, on paper looks really good, and it's not even on paper, it is really good. And I was feeling um what, you know, after hearing this and thinking about this, I was feeling um what this level of crisis, and how the dictionary defines crisis is that it's simply a time in your life where you have to make a difficult decision, you know. So you've got competing priorities, or you have um you're noticing your actions, like he's partying a little too hard, and he's noticing that in his, you know, um, mind. He recognizes that that's not an ideal path for him to be on. He's also got, you know, he's concerned about his mother, and he doesn't like the idea of them feeling threatened by the neighbor. And so he's got all of these things, and it's a crisis because he has to stop sort of ignoring what's happening and make some sort of a decision. He's at a choice point about what's going to happen next. Does he just keep living this life, pretending that, you know, that the home front will take care of itself, pretending that his partying is just, you know, what college kids do and it's not a problem? And um, or does he recognize that he's in some level of crisis and that a decision needs to be made? Some sort of a decision needs to be made that's going to alter something, right? And that's what you know, that's what the dictionary defines as a crisis, is when a difficult decision needs to be made. So it's not necessarily chaos or this disaster has just occurred. It's a decision point that you feel is almost inevitable, like, you know, it's becoming that difficult. And for me, what I was experiencing at the time, my form of crisis was that I was noticing that my sleep was not as good as it had been. um, I was you know, I was moving from one commitment to the next obligation, and you know, just very fast paced. I was doing a lot of travel downtown Chicago, which from the suburbs, you know, depending on traffic and weather, sometimes, you know, an hour, you know, like I think generally it's about 45 minutes when it's perfect smooth sailing, but you hit bad traffic, an accident, you know, weather, it could be a couple hours that you're just sitting on the road, right? And I was doing a lot of that because that is what built my business. And so I had noticed that I just didn't feel like I could catch my breath. Like I was moving so quickly among so many different things. And at night, I just collapse in front of the television, scroll on my phone, you know, eat leftovers. And the things that I normally like to do, um, like I love making soup. You know, I just didn't have the energy. I was just like, ugh, I don't feel like it. I'll just buy, you know, the containers at Whole Foods or Panera or whatever. I'll just get these containers of pre-made soups. Not bad for me or anything, just, you know, but the pleasure that I get out of chopping vegetables and making my soup from scratch and then eating it all week, you know, I didn't have it in me. You know, if I would think about a friend or something, I would often just send them a quick text that thinking about you, you know, or even a coaching client thinking about you, you know, like I would do that. Just, you know, that just as a natural part of kind of the inspiration that would come to me, and I would follow that, or I'd send someone a card, right? And but none of that was happening in this last year, like less and less frequently, because I was in my form of crisis. I was spent at the end. Like when Friday came, you know, a suggestion to even go to a movie was like, nope. Like all I want to do is hole up. And I'm not saying that there aren't that is, you know, not something that's worthwhile doing. But for me, I was recognizing that it was a factor of this sort of crisis level pace that I put myself in. So, you know, whether I wanted to admit it or not, I was definitely in in a crisis. Emotionally, I just, you know, I was feeling a little bit down in the dumps. Mentally, I was foggy and physically just tired. Wasn't sleeping as well, which then you know how that adds up, right? Ugh, you gotta sleep. Sleep is important, my favorite thing. So I recognized that I needed to amputate something. Um, when I was listening to this podcast, and I thought to myself that like Dr. Jandile, who amputated what many people would say was the bright spot in his life, this, Berkeley opportunity. For me, it was amputating networking. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that because that was the thing that I had chosen to do because I knew it got me out of my basement, first of all, my office space just got me out meeting people, potential clients. It brought me offers to speak and it gave me, both inside organizations and at events. It consistently was bringing me new clients, so revenue. But and I, just going out and listening to people talk on panels, I love that. I love learning, and staying closer to what's happening out in the world. Um, and like AI, of course, is huge. And I went to several like panels on that people were talking, giving their thoughts about AI and AI's impact. And I soak it all in, right? That's something that I really, really enjoy. So to amputate networking seemed counterintuitive. It was my Berkeley in a way, right? So, but that, you know, the networking, when I really thought about it, was the thing that was leading to me overextending myself. Um, you know, Lots of nights on the road. I am not a night person, and so those commutes downtown and then events going till 8 or 9 at night, and then coming home, which also disrupted my eating, not only my sleep but my eating patterns because of a whole bunches of things. And so the it just you know I was depleted, and so what I'm doing, what I've been doing for the past couple of weeks is making some different choices, amputating, not like full amputation, but pulling back. I said no to a board seat actually because of the time that it was going to be required of me to do what I consider, a really good job in that role. And again, opportunity for my business, opportunity for more visibility and exposure for me, opportunity for more revenue, of course. And it just felt like, as I sat with the invitation, I could feel my body. I was like, oh my God, it just again feels like I'm going to war. And so and and so I thought, that's a no. That has to be a no to me. And now I've been thinking about looking at all of my networking opportunities and making more strategic decisions, which I already thought I was doing. But when you're, up against the wall and you're really thinking about the fact that, this crisis could, if I stay in crisis, we know where that could lead, right? And so, that consistently, stress hormones being released into your body is very unhealthy. And so I needed to become even more strategic and intentional about my networking. So I started to, um, I'm pulling out some of the networking. I am looking for more morning events. I'm considering like starting my own morning networking event because where are my morning peeps, right? And in the suburbs instead of downtown. And I'm uh, looking at the opportunities and seeing, what do I really want? I like a little more intimate than big, large rooms. So let's do more of that, right? So just thinking about um, the networking. And also, there's a part of me that remembered in this process that when I trust, my mission statement is to spread love in all its forms, all its highest forms, to have fun, and to trust life unconditionally. And when I think about doing a lot of networking, there to the point of no longer making homemade soup, what that leads me to is sort of a sense of not trusting that the divine, life, the universe, whatever you call it, that you know always supporting and guiding me force, um it was like I was getting in the way of that again. And in my best moments, I remember that I can stand in the current. It's something we're talking about inside of Career Alchemy Academy for our touchstone this month, about being in flow, right? Which is really about trusting that you are being carried, that you don't have to work so hard. Dip your paddle in the canoe once in a while, just get in the river, let the canoe take you, and occasionally, use the paddle to steer, but also trust that you're being taken somewhere and carried somewhere important. You're being connected to the right people at the right time. The doors are going to be opening, and you can use this same philosophy for job searches and career advancement, that instead of thinking that I've got to control every aspect of how my business grows and how I meet new people, and that I can allow this, I can do less, and that can actually create more and better connections and opportunities for my business. I say that out loud. I don't know how that might happen, but that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking with that. Life wants us to be not in crisis ever, ever. And so try this. When you're right now, with me, if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, or do this later, when you have some time, you might have a journal with you, and just close your eyes, take a few deep breaths in, just calming yourself, calming your regulating, calming your nervous system, just feeling more grounded, centered, and safe through your breath. And then ask yourself, where might I be experiencing a quiet crisis right now, or a very loud one? But where might this be happening? And what might I need to amputate? And then choose one thing this week, something big, something small. Say no to an invitation, call and regretfully back out of something. Start to look at how you've been, the areas of your life that maybe that bring you joy that you haven't been able to tend to, like the soup making, right? And think about how you can create more space for that if you let go of this, and really embody this idea that if you trust life unconditionally, that you don't have to run at top speed in every moment to create a life that you love, right? That you can do nothing or next to nothing, and all of these things can just happen and appear somehow. I actually got a referral this week from a past client, and I was like, there it is. There's, through my amputation of the networking, the network hustle, I've a referral came to me. Now, it might have come anyways. We don't know, right? But I'm just believing that it was because I created this space and align myself with what brings me joy. Again, align myself with what feels the most like love for me, what feels the most like spaciousness, flow, which which is our word this month, what feels the most like that, when I'm aligned with that, then, I stay out of crisis. And that's kind of it. That's the message for today. Aligning yourself with the things that, you know, um, amputating all those things that do not no longer feel aligned or are not feeling aligned with peace and joy and love and rest and enthusiasm, and being intentional and deliberate about how you how you fill your time, and then you know knowing that you might have to make some difficult decisions. That's the definition of crisis, when you have to make some difficult choices. But then once you do, just the relief that comes, like I felt just so much more peaceful and excited about making soup. Like I've been my husband for Christmas gave me this soup magazine, right? And right around Christmas, I had looked through it and was putting in post-it notes, and then I've done nothing. And now I thought, I'm pulling out that magazine because I just don't feel so spent. In just 2 weeks of this, I feel much more. At first, I was just happy to have nothing on my calendar, to tell you the truth. And now I'm feeling excited about doing more of the things that have me connected to, the people and the things that I love to do. So, and I think that's really the point. So that's it. Just notice this week what you can amputate, and then do a gentle amputation of anything that may be creating some level of crisis in your life, recognizing that making some hard decisions sometimes is the best thing you can do for your health, physical, mental, and emotional health, the best thing you can do for your relationships and for your career. You can move your career out of crisis by amputation. We're all surgeons here. We're all surgeons here. So thank you so much for joining me this week. Next week, same time, same channels. And looking forward to that topic, which is, because I've already written. Here's the thing, I'm ahead on my blog. And I have to say, there must be a direct line between, the networking and creating a blog ahead of time. Usually I have a personal deadline of Thursdays for my blogs, but this week I turned it in on Monday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. It feels so good to be out of crisis and to be able to do things ahead of time. And so I can actually tell you the topic, which many times I can't because I'm so scheduled out. But this time it's about, are you being quiet fired? And the 7 signs that it might be happening and what you can do about it. So tell all your friends and get on a call with me, and let's get you inside this career alchemy community where you can get more aligned with who you are, working the way you're meant to be working, with the people you're meant to be working with, doing the work you're meant to be doing in this non-crisis way. So that's my promise to you, that this is possible. I'm doing it for myself. People inside of Career Alchemy Academy are doing it. Do not wait. Amputate other things. Create space for Career Alchemy instead. That's it. I'll talk to you all soon. Peace as always. Love and connection. Community.